Ladies and gentlemen, episode number 30. We live in a society that values round numbers. So this is 30. Cool little benchmark. What better way to bring in episode number 30 than with Breven McMullen? Brev, appreciate you being here, man.
Absolutely, man. Appreciate you having me on.
For sure. So for those that may not know who you are, let them know who you are, what you do, where you've been.
I'm Breven. Basically, I just finished up with my collegiate basketball career. Finished my last couple years at MOBAP. College-wise, bounced around a little bit. Going into college, I did a semester at Link Year Prep. Left there a semester, went to Missouri Southern. From there, went JUCO. We played at Middle Area for a year. Did my last couple years at MOBAP. Throughout high school and college, I was always on the basketball skill development sides. I was in a really small town. Not a lot of people worked with the basketball community there, so I kind of took that, ran with it, started building up the clientele with basketball skill development. And then in college, got more into the performance side of it. So I recently just switched over, now full-time sports performance coach.
Nice. Shout out to Supernatural Performance.
Shout out Supernatural.
Leon Moody. He came on he was on for episode number 2. So he was one of the first.
One of the OGs.
One of the OGs, man. So talk about how you guys linked up and then that process from that point to like working with him or for him in that same building.
So I met Moody 2 summers ago. I was down in Houston. I went and interned for Stefan Martinez at Dig Deep Basketball for a summer. Lived with
Repping
him.
the merch right now.
Repping the merch right now. Went down there and lived with him for a summer. Basically just, working out myself, also helping him with the workouts with those guys. Moody was down there with one of his athletes. So that's where I met him, ironically, down in Houston. And then we worked a couple camps together here in the St. Louis area. And then once I wanted to get into performance training, I hit Moody on Instagram and I basically just asked him if I could just come watch and just kind of learn. Didn't really say anything about me coming on to train with him or anything. I just wanted to pick up game. I knew he was one of the best in the area at what he did. I just wanted to come in and watch, and it kind of slowly developed into me joining the team, and now we're here now.
And so what was that process like of you've played basketball your whole life. You said you started doing skills training in high school. What was, I guess, that mindset of locking in on the performance side instead of the skills?
I think for me, the performance side was the biggest difference maker. Coming out of high school, I went to prep school because I wasn't strong enough and I was too slow. That's what I got told. That's why I didn't get offers I wanted. So I'm like, I'm going to go to prep school. I'm going to get bigger, stronger. And then, like I said, I ended up leaving prep school, ended up going JUCO, finished up at MOBAP. My last year at MOBAP, I really, really locked in on the performance side the summer before my senior year. And that's where I made the biggest jump for me. So I guess my passion for the performance side just basically comes from me having the most success with it. That was the biggest difference maker for me, and I know it can be for a lot of other people.
And when you said, so your senior year at MOBAP, you're locking in on the performance training, is that you, like you have a trainer that you're working with, or is that you just like YouTube and experimenting, being your own guinea pig?
That was me experimenting, researching, YouTube's, books, podcasts, couple guys. When I was interning on the skill side, some of the guys would have performance and then come into us. So I was always picking their brains, like, yo, what'd you guys do today? And just asking them questions when they come in, picking up a game from them, going and trying things myself. So a lot of it was just kind of figuring out myself. I definitely had people along the way that put me on game, taught me a lot, but a lot of it was experiments, figuring out what worked, figuring out what doesn't. That
can be the best way to do it.
For sure.
Sometimes. Just discovering, self-discovery, like going down. Because I was the similar way with performance training a little bit at first, and then the skill stuff. You just like, you find certain things and then you just deep dive into it. What were some of the, so you mentioned books and podcasts. What were some of the, like your bread and butter resources, the guys that were post in or authors maybe that you really enjoyed diving into?
People wise, Chris, he just came on here, Chris Forrest.
Yes, sir.
He probably got annoyed with me, all the questions I asked him all the time. But
I didn't even think about that though, because he's tapped into that for sure.
Chris was a great resource for me. I'll still hit Chris to this day when I got questions and ask him. Like I said, picking the brains of players that are, mid-30s, they've been around the game for years, picking out, like, if you're playing the game at 35, like, you've done something right to your body up until that point. Picking the brains of players, and then YouTube, big fan of Mike G, GBG Hoops.
GBG.
I bought the app. I went through and put all of those. I tried to, blend all the different programs together. Big fan of his. Took a lot of inspiration from him. PJF was a big fan of him. All the YouTube. Yep. And then Overtime Athletics was a big fan of him too. So kind of taking a blend of everyone and kind of trying to make them into who I am myself. I don't really think there is any experts in the field because what we know now is not what we're going to know in 10 years. It's always going to change. So, we're always learning. Science is always developing. So trying to take everyone's ideas and philosophies and kind of just figuring out what works the best for certain individuals.
I like that because you're right. It's a very fast evolving industry. Just the amount of technology that we have access to, which leads to more information. So like you said, it keeps on going. That has to be, it could be motivating. It could be daunting because you have to stay on top of everything. How do you approach it?
Always just finding ways to progress. So always not, I do like the phrase, if it's not broke, don't fix it. So if you're doing something with athletes and it's working, keep going. But you always got to find ways to make it more challenging or, that's why I think research is so important. That way you're staying up to date because what we know, what was true 20 years ago, we now know, it's not true. 20 years ago, basketball players were told don't lift because they said it was going to, it's going to mess with your shot. It's going to make you slower. Obviously now we know that's not true. It is daunting, but I think it's just, it emphasizes the importance of keeping up with research.
So, okay, that was going to be my next question. So that's good. So research, I would imagine studying for the certification and also just in general, trying to become a better trainer. Are you reading scientific research studies?
Sometimes, yes. I'll say I did the certification, did gain some knowledge in that. Honestly, I've learned more with Moody in the past couple of weeks than I have being in the field, thrown in the fire, watching him adapt to certain things. I've gotten more out of that than I did books or certification. I think there's so much more value in actually being there in front of the athletes, watching a coach. I think you get a lot more value out of that than you do, scientific studies or reading. Not to say those don't provide value also, but there's nothing like actually being there and learning from someone in front of you.
Yeah, I think they can help, the studies and stuff can help point us in a direction. But like you said, we're working with people, not statistics, I guess. So like you said, you're on the, I forget the term for it, but you're on the field, so to speak, watching Leon do his thing, and you're learning more through that experience. I forgot you went to Link. Let's talk about that. I've heard, so prep school, I have the idea of you're there for basketball. The organization of Link or whatever is going to outsource their education. So you're taking all online classes. You're mainly there for basketball. Is that how you felt?
I was there the year before they added the high school team. We didn't have the high school team when I was there. I was there in 2021. They added the high school team the next year. So when I was there, it was only the prep team, so in between high school and college. So education-wise, we didn't have school. Basically,
how does that work?
So on a day-to-day,
prep. That's just interesting.
It was a Link year is well, I can't speak on it anymore. I'm not sure because they have the high school team now. So obviously you do have your school education side. It's a biblical based school. I was there. We would have, our school would be more life coaches, motivational speakers, things of that nature. You'd wake up, you'd go to weights, you come back, the whole team eats together every day. Then you go practice, and then you have, I guess what you'd call school. It was 3 or 4 hours every day. We'd sit in the classroom and a different speaker would come in and talk to us every day. It wasn't textbook school, your algebra, history, stuff like that. It was motivational speakers, life coaches. Then you're going back for individual workouts that night and wake up, do it again.
That sounds like a dream.
It was.
Yeah. Yeah. So like you graduated high school and then went to Link.
Mm-hmm.
And is there, like St. Louis Christian is a prep school, but they have the school component. Are there other schools like that, like Link at the time, where it's kind of just hoops?
So there is a couple schools that have the prep, the gap year. Like we play, I know IMG has them.
Okay.
Bird has the prep. SEMO prep, they kind of do the same thing. I know some do implement, you get some college credit while you're there, some don't. Some focus just solely on the sports. So I guess it's kind of dependent on the school.
SEMO prep, shout out to Isaiah Robinson.
Shout out Isaiah.
He was kind of your neck of the woods, wasn't he?
Yep, right down the street.
Farmington area. Nice. I coached him when he was at DeSmet.
Okay.
His senior year. Okay, so now we get done with Link. You said you left there early?
I left the semester. I went to Missouri Southern halfway through semester of my freshman year.
Okay. And so your college career as a whole, Missouri Southern, NCAA D2, and then Moberly, JUCO.
Mineral area.
My fault. I always get those mixed up. Mineral area, JUCO, and then Missouri Baptist, NAIA.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say was some of or the biggest adjustment that you had to make? D2 to JUCO, JUCO to NAIA, D2 to NAIA, flipping between levels. What would you say the biggest adjustment was in terms of like on the court play style, not necessarily within your team, but like as in that level as a whole?
Every level has been completely different. I think the biggest adjustment for me was the first year, high school to Link year, coming from Park Hills, Missouri. The level of athletes aren't as high as, a lot of other places. So going from there to being on the floor with now NBA guys and at Link here, that was a huge jump athletically. That's when I kind of started to get into the performance training like we were talking about earlier, because I'm like, I gotta do something. It wasn't necessarily a skill thing at that point. It was like physically I just could not keep up. The game was very, very fast, very similar to JUCO. I played the same pace kind of at Link here. We played a lot of JUCOs on our schedule. So coming from, very small town Park Hills to that really high paced was kind of the biggest jump. And then moving to Missouri Southern, a lot slower game, a lot more physical, but slower, more coach controlled. Guys were very, very skilled, and then kind of back to JUCO, so kind of back to the faster paced. And then NAIA is a mix. Each team in the NAIA is completely different. You have no idea. There's guys that, you have no idea why they're here. You don't know what happened. Just everyone has their own story. Everyone has their own situation. There's some very, very high level guys that end up falling through the cracks and ended up in the NAIA. And then there's some guys that, aren't as athletically gifted. So the NAIA was really interesting to play in because it was different every single night.
That's the first time I've heard that. When Chris was on here, he was talking about And Cortland too was saying like it's hard to, Cortland was saying it's hard to get to that rim.
It's very, very packed in.
Yeah.
Very, 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 very tight.
And so would you say that is a consistent thing across all teams, or even that kind of varies?
It is. I mean, from the Division II level, Division I level to NAIA, there is a skill gap. You know, the ball's not shot as high as a percentage. Therefore, everything's going to be packed in. You know, so it is hard to, you know, find gaps that rather than, it's almost easier to score at the Division II level than it is the NAIA level at times.
Interesting. Just because D2, there's more space?
A lot more space. Yep.
Nice. So your role, bounce around teams, has your role, well, what was your role, or did it change throughout the years in college?
It's definitely changed. Coming out of high school, I was a guy who averaged 25. Just put the ball in the hole, got to do whatever I wanted in high school. Like I said, I came from Park Hills, Missouri. You know, was all-state, almost 2,000 points in high school. Go to Link here. I'm the 8th, 9th man off the bench. Come in, catch the ball, shoot the ball, don't dribble it. And then come back and sit down for 5 minutes, go back in for 2, let 2 more go. That was a big adjustment. And then Southern, I came in a semester, didn't play much there. And then I was actually academically ineligible. That's why I had to leave Southern. Then I went to Mineral area, didn't play there either because I was ineligible the first semester. Played 1 game, injury, didn't play the rest of the year. That's how I ended up at MOBAP after that. And then MOBAP I was there for 3 years. My role kind of steadily increased every year I was there. Kind of the same role I was at Link here. The first year, bounced around in the first rotation, and then 6th, 7th man off the bench. Come in, spot up shooter. A little more freedom the second year. Numbers all increased. And then the last year was where I feel like I made the biggest jump and had probably the biggest role I've had.
So Park Hills got the keys, playing, I guess high school games are 32 minutes. You're probably playing 32 of those.
Yep.
So the adjustment of going from that to, you said Missouri Southern, you're playing like 8 minutes here, shoot a couple, sit on the bench, come back, shoot 2 more. Mentally, what was that process like? Was it hard for you to make an impact without having a rhythm?
It was. It's obviously frustrating when you've never had that role in your life, and then you go into it. And I was talking to someone who was a mentor, and I was basically just like, man, this isn't even fun. Like, well, I don't want to do it. And he was like, well, you're gonna have to figure out if you really love basketball, or if you just love being better than everyone, like you were back home. And that was kind of a reality check for me. Like, all right, I'm in it for the long run. Like, we're gonna have to make it stick. So that was the biggest adjustment there. That was the biggest thing for me.
And I think that point when you're talking to your mentor, in some cases, can be where a lot of people go the other direction. Mm-hmm. And I know there's a lot of people that quote unquote fall off after high school. Like they're that guy and then get to college, and then at all levels, NAIA, high major D1, everything in between, there's this adjustment period that goes on in college that some people, including myself, to be honest, there was a learning curve. What do you think? It might just depend. Every situation is different, but what do you think that main adjustment from high school to college is? Is it like you mentioned athleticism. Is it maybe like you said Missouri Southern was really like set oriented. Is it that type of stuff? What do you think it is?
I think it's just figuring out that you can do a lot more than you thought you did in high school or the previous level before. And then the biggest thing, it's not always what you're doing, it's how you're doing it every day. Like no coach is going to come in and have like the best drills for everything, every player that comes in. So how you approach every drill, going as hard as you possibly can through each one was the biggest adjustment for me. And then every level, like the higher I've seen, it made me feel like I would have been working less hard. Seeing, getting to college, being like, oh man, like I thought I was working hard. Like these guys are working way harder than me. So then I started, working harder, and then I watch NBA guys and I watch them go through a workout. And then they're exhausted in the first 10 minutes and they're the best athletes in the world. So kind of seeing the perspective of not so much what to do differently, but how to do things differently.
Had a question, but I lost it. Oh, okay. So skills training in high school is when you started that. When you got to maybe even Link, then also college, was there any like, I'm going to the gym to work out, couple teammates are there, one thing leads to the next, now I'm putting them through drills, so I'm kind of like training my teammates?
Yeah, I've always had teammates hop in with me in workouts. It's never really been like me training them. They'd always just hop in workouts myself that way. But I tried to keep it separate almost. Like when I was in season at school, like I was a basketball player. I didn't really focus on any other athletes. I was focused on myself there. After season was over, I'd still obviously work on my own game, but that's when I would, do more skill stuff on the side. But when basketball was in season, like I was trying to make sure I was a basketball player first before I was a trainer.
So grew up Park Hills, Farmington area. That's where Steph is from. Mm-hmm. Dig Deep basketball. You guys got connected. You first started working with them in high school?
I was 7th grade.
Young buck. Nice. So, and then 10 whatever years later, you're like in Houston with them. So that's like a lifelong relationship, pretty much. What was his role like, if any, throughout college, navigating the ups and downs of the season, playing for 8 minutes, going back to the bench to come back, like just the ebbs and flows of a college career? Maybe in season, was there like, I guess you could say mentorship, but just like chopping it up, advice, giving us 2 cents type of stuff?
Yeah, there always was, especially in high school, the first couple of years of college. You would always catch, at least if you couldn't catch the game, you go back and watch it on Synergy. But he was always there if I ever had any questions, training-wise, basketball-wise myself. That was always the guy I went to in college. If I ever had any questions at all. If he was always in town, he always make sure he'd come watch a game. Obviously, when he moved down to Houston, there wasn't, as much communication there. He was doing his thing down there. But, yeah, that's always been the number one guy I'll always go to with any questions.
For sure. We've only had a handful of back and forths, texting and DMs and stuff, but he is real solid. Like he's always been there answering any questions I have. Like, so he's a real solid dude. So going to Houston to train with them, that was heading into your last year at MoBat?
Yep.
Okay. So do you know who Ian is, the rapper?
Yeah.
So there's this tweet that had like a 30-second clip of him rapping. And then the caption was, "This is going to be Reed Shepherd a month after spending in Houston." I've been to Houston once. My homeboy went to, actually shout out to Marcus. He was on here episode 11 or 12. He went to Rice University. So I was down there, kicked it with them. So I got like a little taste of Houston, I guess, but nothing crazy. How would you describe, not even on the court, but just like the people there, the culture? How would you describe Houston?
I would love to personally live there one day. Actually, I loved it. People are very, welcoming, I guess. Like people, like you'll see each other on the street and you'll stop and have a conversation. A lot of it's always warm down there. There's more people like walking around outside compared to like here. I loved Houston. I had a great time when I was down there, even off the court. There's so much stuff to do down there too.
We went to the Drake concert down there and just kind of kicked it on the campus at Rice. So like a good little feel, but I'd imagine like if you're living there for a summer, you're out walking. So I was curious to hear your perspective. So take me through what a normal day. So you're in Houston working with Steph, working with him and then working for him basically. Take me through like a typical day, what that looks like.
So it would start our workout. It was me and then one other dude who was kind of doing the same thing I was. So we would wake up. Our workout would be first thing in the morning. That was usually at 5. So we're starting the workout at 5, and then we're 5 to 6. After that, from 6 to usually, I mean, there's gaps in between, obviously, but usually around 8 p.m. We're skill workouts with other guys. So that's where I'm, rebounding, playing defense, passing, just aiding in the workouts, interning for him there. There was always a couple gaps in between. That's where I'd get my lift performance workout in between there. And then go home, go to sleep, do it all over again. So basketball from basically 6 a.m. to 8 p.m.
Do you know who Josh Fan is?
Josh Fan, I don't think so.
He actually, great person for you to tap in with. Like checking out his content wise. He was or is Jeremy Lin's trainer.
Okay.
A lot of good stuff skill wise. He also, I don't know if he has how much content he has in the weight room, but he incorporates a lot of like physical qualities in the skills training and like dynamic warm-ups and stuff like that. I was watching a coaching clinic that he gave, and he was saying a good way to measure workload is time spent on your feet. I mean, you're on them bad boys for 15 hours, something like that. So body has to be on 100.
Yeah, it was. You got to fight through some stuff. At the end of the day, you can do as much recovery and stretching. Your nutrition can be fine. End of the day, if you're on your feet that much, you're going to have to mentally just kind of get through some stuff. But there was every night non-negotiable was stretching, foam rolling. Nutrition during that point was the best mine's ever been. So body inflammation was really low. I took care of my body that summer. And then weight room rise, training, kind of figuring things out, training properly, to just make my body feel the best more than anything. That's the summer. Like I said, I kind of figured out the performance side of it. But yeah, end of the day, you're feeling it. Definitely. You could always get more sleep, more stretch more. There's a bunch of different recovery modalities you can do, but end of the day, you're going to have to get through some stuff.
Take me through a typical workout with Steph, 5 a.m. to 6 a.m. Is it just you and him?
Me, it was always a couple college guys.
Okay.
There was a handful of times I'd work out by myself, but most of the time it was me, maybe 2 or 3 other dudes in college.
And what are you working on? Is it on air stuff? Are you going live? Is it dummy defense? What does it look like?
It was different. It was different every day. That summer, a lot of the workouts were based around just randomization, having to make different reads. We were really big on that summer, and I feel like that made a big jump for me as well. But yeah, each day was different. There were competition days where it'd be more live play. There would be days where it'd be on ear, just working technical, small, details, specific stuff. There would be lighter days at the end of the week. Like I said, when we're on our feet, 40 hours a week playing basketball and playing defense. When I'm playing on defense on those guys, like if I'm not going full speed, there's no point in me being there. So end of the week workouts would be lighter, heavier, more intense at the beginning.
Playing defense, shit, that probably leveled up your defense heading into...
That is performance training.
Yeah, agility, change direction. Hell yeah. So then would you go, I mean, because you're spending that summer guarding some NBA guys, pro guys. And so then heading into senior year at MoBet, are you guarding people and like, oh, this is light?
Everything moves so much slower than, yeah.
Yeah. That's fire. Yeah, because when you're guarding guys, so that summer in Houston, I mean, to them, like your full out defense is probably essentially dummy defense to them.
Yeah. Speed wise, agility wise, physicality and strength. Yeah.
Did you have a moment or any moments where like the welcome to the NBA moment?
Very first day I was there, I get off the plane, Uber to the gym. Literally hop in, I walk in, stuff's like, put your shoes on. Jayshawn Tate's working out with for the Rockets. Jayshawn Tate is just lifting up out of the corner, catch and shoot. I got told to basically, him walk me in, bump, push off. I'm just light contest. He's going, 65%, and he walks me in and pushes off, and I fly to the ground. Steph looks at me and he's like, welcome. Like, wow.
It's different, man.
The strength of those dudes is insane.
Different. Yeah, because you don't realize it when they're competing against each other. Mm-hmm. They were saying, people were talking about how impressive the Thompson twins are because athletically they stand out amongst the top 450 athletes in the world. So yeah, that's a good point. Like him going at 60% speed puts your ass on the floor. Was it so NBA guys, college guys, overseas guys?
Yep, big mix of both.
Was there any difference in, I guess mainly overseas versus NBA college? Was there any, I'm just real fascinated with like the culture differences. So maybe just their attitude or mentality approaching a workout, or any differences you picked up on between overseas players versus American?
Yeah, I think it goes back to kind of what I was saying earlier, just like how they do everything, not so much what they're doing differently. There's not huge differences in their day-to-day, like we just look at their schedule, but how they approach each thing. Like, for example, you mentioned Amen Thompson. Like I watched Amen Thompson, he was a ball handling finishing drill. Like all he had to do was, he was on the line, he had to dribble the ball over, back, between, behind. He had to do that 5 times. I think it was in like 10 seconds. And he couldn't do it because he was dribbling the ball so hard. It wasn't that he couldn't get it. Like he was trying to get it in 6. Like he was dribbling the ball so hard that like if he would have threw the ball, then it probably would have hit the ceiling if he let it go. So just the approach of, I'm not going to do it in 10 seconds. I'm going to do it as hard as I possibly can. And stacking that up over every, single aspect of the workout every single day. I think that's the biggest difference in, the top echelon guys and the other levels. And then, the cliche saying, how you do one thing is how you do everything. If you stack those up day to day, that's going to be the difference maker from, the upper echelon guys to everyone else.
Stacking those 1%
Yep.
every day. You mentioned jumping from college level to level. You see players working out, you think you're working hard, but then you see them and like, okay, we got to pick it up a notch. Is there anything, like was there a similar experience in Houston headed back to MoBap, or what were your main takeaways from that summer?
Main takeaways is your mind is stronger than your body. There's this thing, the Navy SEALs did a study and said when you think you are at your absolute max and you cannot go anymore, they say you're at 40%. They say that's where your mind gives out. So realizing your mind is way stronger than we think. Your body's way stronger than we can think. It can handle way more. Learning to ignore the way the body feels. Obviously don't push through injury, stuff like that, but just learning we can do way more than we think we could. I think that was my biggest takeaway.
Have you read Meditations?
I have not.
Great book. Speaks on exactly that. It's by Marcus Aurelius. I'm not a history guy, but like a way back Roman Greek type of guy. Whole thing on, it's like his journal entries on stoicism and all that. A lot of stuff like that, like just being a machine, like regardless of what your mind is saying, you just go do it. So that'd be a great one to tap in with. Speaking of books, might as well go here now. So you did 75 Hard. Where in the timeline was that?
That was, I think that was right after I left Missouri Southern.
Okay.
I just wanted to do something, one, just for accountability. Like I just became academically knowledgeable, and it wasn't because of, it was just because of me not going to class. It wasn't like, that I couldn't do the work. It's that I physically just, wasn't on top of my schoolwork. So I was like, I got to get back in a groove. So I'm just going to do something that's set that I have to do this, and this every day. And it did help.
That's a good example of, it may not be a you thing or like a us thing. I was the same way, like with school, fuck that, respectively. Like I'm good. I don't want to do it. So then I had these thoughts of like, I'm undisciplined or lazy or whatever it is. But really it's just, I hadn't found what I cared about. Mm-hmm. Like your care level or your discipline for 75 Hard was at like 100 compared to school was like a 20. So it's not necessarily, it's a you thing, or us thing, it's a what we're doing thing, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So 75 Hard, take me through what that is. 75 days of like books and then drinking water, some shit.
Yep. 75 days, 2 workouts a day. One has to be outside, no matter rain, sun, shine, snow, has to be outside. Gallon of water a day. You had to read 10 pages of a book. And then you had to follow a diet. So if you broke anything off the diet, start over. And you had to take a progress picture every day.
What did you do with the pictures? Just for yourself?
Yep. That way you can just kind of, when you get to 75, you can look back and see the difference.
Okay.
It's more designed for people who aren't probably not necessarily athletes. 75 days for the vast majority of the population. If they do those things, most people don't do those things. So they're going to see a giant gap. As an athlete doing those things, obviously my day one picture to the end wasn't extreme as what you see, online of the general population doing 75 Hard. But there was a difference to go back and look at.
That's a good point because shout out to Sean, one of the guys I train, also does photography. He did it for a minute, and this was back when he was working out like on the court and in the weight room, like 3 to 5 workouts a day. And then he was doing 75 Hard. And after day 10, he was like, bro, what am I doing? Like, yeah. I'm not doing another 45-minute outdoor workout.
That's why because I started having some back sciatic issues. The first week I was doing basketball skill work, and then I was going weight room. And then for my outside workout, I was just running on the pavement every day for 45 minutes straight. I was like, dude, I can't do this. Like my shins are hurting, my knees are killing me. So I switched to just doing, I'd go outside and just do a body weight lift, or I would go, I would set my mat up and just stretch and do yoga, count that as my outdoor 45-minute workout. But then eventually I had some back problems. I had to take a whole week and do nothing. So I'm like, all right, the most important thing here is still getting better at basketball. So
facts.
I got to, I cut it off after that.
What was the diet and why?
My diet was I didn't follow a super, super strict one. I just made sure I had to hit my macros every day. As an athlete, there's a difference in eating for performance and eating for health. We don't have to eat necessarily for health to an extent. The main thing is making sure we're properly fueled. So I had my macros, my proteins, carbs, fat that I had to hit. As long as I hit those, I was good.
All right, we're gonna circle back and tap into the nutrition stuff later because I definitely want to talk about that. The books, so 10 pages a day. What did you read?
What was the first one I read? I read a David Goggins one, Freak, just absolute freak of nature.
Crazy.
And then I read The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck.
Yep.
Those were the two I read during that time.
Yeah, shit, David Goggins is the epitome of like, you can do more than your mind.
If you're doing 75 hard, you should read a David Goggins book. Like that should be what you start off with there.
Yeah. Okay, and then Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. I've read that. It's real solid. Mm-hmm. Okay, so did that, and then so Houston, and then heading into your senior year at Mobat. You said your role kind of increased each year. Just overall, though, like what's your mindset going into that year? Just in general.
At that point, I had loved basketball at that point more than I had probably since high school. You know, I felt like, going to Lincoln, leaving, failing out of Missouri Southern, basically not playing at Mineral area, going through all that, and then at the end of all that, loving the game as much as I did, when I was a kid. My mindset was like I was really excited to get in there and like just start the year. No one had seen me for like 2 months work out, so I was excited to get back in front of everyone. And then I knew going in I was going to have the best year that I'd ever had in college. So I couldn't wait to get back, honestly.
That's a great feeling. I forgot about that. Like off season, handful of your teammates, coaches, whatever, like haven't seen you work out. So then you come in and just flex and like, this is what I've been doing. So your junior year at Mobat was Coach P's last year.
Yep.
And then senior year was Jarvis's first year. What would you say were some similarities, differences, main adjustments that you had to make from one coach to the next?
For the system wise, it wasn't really that different. Coach Jarvis, he came in, he started as our JV coach, under P.
That's right.
And then just kind of slowly, worked his way into that role. So he did take a lot from Coach P. Obviously not, a photocopy, he was still had his own philosophy, stuff like that. But I had a really good relationship with Taylor. Taylor's dad actually coached my dad.
Really?
When my dad played at Maryville, he was the assistant there. So I've always had a really good relationship with Coach Jarvis there. Different style of coaching for sure. Coach P is you've probably seen him coach, very animated, in your face, intense guy. Taylor's a little more of a laid back guy at times. He's kind of a mix of both worlds, but two completely different personalities. A lot of the same philosophy, so there wasn't an adjustment period that, on that, like the actual X's and O's side of it.
So you say Coach P can be intense in your face. I know you played for, shout out to Darian, with Gateway.
Very similar coaching styles.
Yes. So I was going to say that I played for Darian, and then full circle was his assistant for a summer with Gateway. So yeah, very similar styles. So you were probably used to it. Would you say there is a certain approach of coach that you maybe resonate more with, or kind of like you respond better to, maybe unlock something for you?
I don't think there's that one that's better than the other. I think the most important thing that I learned I think I kind of picked this up in Missouri Southern. It's really just important to take what's being said, not the way it's being said. Because over the course of my career, I've had 4 or 5 different college coaches that all relayed the information the same or in their own way. But learning to take what the message is rather than how it's being said, I think was the biggest thing.
Nice. So get done senior year. How did you guys do? I forget. As a
This past
team.
year?
As a team, yeah.
Middle of the pack. Finished, I think, 4th or 5th in the conference. Knocked out second round of the tournament.
Okay. So are you like thinking about overseas or some other opportunity? Do you know that this is your final year hooping? What was that like?
I thought about it leading up to the end of the year. I didn't really know what I was going to do. I was like, I don't know if I want to keep playing. I don't know if I want to go on the performance side. I don't know if I want to go on the skill side. And just like I do every summer, as soon as basketball season's over, I start working with kids again. Focus more on the performance side because I knew more at this point than I did the previous summers. And then I was like, man, I really, really enjoy this. My kids were seeing progress. Like they were starting to become invested with it. And then kind of the same thing that happened with me was happening to them. Like, I seen results. It really helped me. I'm seeing the same thing in them. And I fell in love with, providing results to other people. So that's kind of why I chose to just go full time with the performance side.
Nice. So performance training, you have to get a certification.
Not necessarily. There's no like legality that says you have to have a certification. I kind of wanted to do it. Obviously, like if you're a performance coach, like for a school, you got to be certified there. A lot of times they'll require you to have, kinesiology degree or a sports performance degree, something along those lines. I didn't have that. I did business management, so I wanted to just kind of get my certification. So I had some sort of education in the field. So that's kind of why I did it.
I didn't know that. I thought it was a requirement. You had to have it.
Yep. A lot of times, like if you're hired on by, a company or a business, they might require you to have it. But legality-wise, there's no requirement.
Interesting. So you said you started working with kids with performance training. How old? What age?
Youngest I've done is 8 or 9. At that point, you're just more teaching them how to move than anything. And then the oldest, I have people that are my age. I just trained today, actually.
Nice. So you mentioned 8 or 9 years old. It's mainly like teaching them how to move. Mm. Are there other differences in your approach, tactical wise, or just like as a person, how you communicate with them, 8 or 9 versus your age?
8 or 9, if they're not having fun, they're not going to play the sport when they're 16, 17, 18. Making sure, yes, they're learning. We're working on our movement patterns. Motor skills are developing. But end of the day, like 8 or 9 years old, like you should be having fun, enjoying the sport that you're playing. Whether it's baseball, football, basketball, or whether you're in the gym training, you should still be enjoying the sport. So that's the most important thing for them. You can do things such as having them play games that develop motor skills, and then teaching them movement patterns through the games, having them compete with one another. I like to take that approach with the younger kids.
What's a go-to game?
Races.
Yes.
Doing, whether it be straight line sprints or, setting up cones, obstacle courses where they got to change direction, different forms of competition through races and games.
Do you know who Alan Stein is?
Sounds very familiar.
He's he's an OG. He coached at DeMatha High School. He did like performance stuff. If you saw his face, you'd recognize him. But I remember watching his stuff when I was like, probably before high school. And he was saying that one of the best like performance training things for kids is to play tag.
Yeah.
I was like, damn, you're right.
It's random. Like there's no, all right, sprint here. Like you have to go the reaction piece of it. The kids are going to run full speed because they don't want to lose. A lot of times if you tell a kid to get on a line and run as fast as he can, he's not going to. But if you tell him, go catch your friend, like they don't want to lose. They're going to go full speed. So having to react to something, getting maximum effort. That's a great way to do it.
So you said 8 or 9 years old, main thing is teach them how to move. meaning like sprint mechanics, or what is it?
I think the biggest thing, sprint mechanics to an extent. Their body's still going to develop. So everyone has their baseline mechanics of what you should have in movement, but each person's individual. And we don't know what an 8 or 9-year-old kid's going to look like in 5 to 6 years. So yes, mechanic, footwork patterns, proprioception, knowing where their body parts are and where they want to be and being able to get them there. Basic footwork stuff, things of that nature.
Proprioception. What are your go-tos for training that? I know people clown on, like, not meatheads, but people be in the gym, like, doing back squats on a Bosu ball for proprioception, quote unquote. Which may not be the most effective way to do it. What are your like bread and butter ways to train spatial awareness, proprioception?
One of the ways I like to do it, I like my feet on the ground, not knocking anyone who does use the pads or the balance balls. I like the pad, like the foam pad. If we're going to do something balance-wise, I like that. Also, just training barefoot so we can feel the ground.
Yes, sir.
And training, doing things eyes closed. That way you're solely relying on feeling where your body parts are. I mean, that's what proprioception is. So doing, training with your eyes closed, doing balance exercises, footwork stuff with your eyes closed, you're solely relying on what you feel on the ground.
We're huge fans of getting barefoot over here at Grounded Hoops. PJF had videos about that. Stand on one foot, close your eyes is like level 1, and then level 2, you're like looking side to side. Yeah, I think eyes closed is a cheat code. I'll do some of that stuff like part of a warm up or even part of the workout, depending on who I'm training. We'll go eyes closed without the ball, freestyle dribbling, I think is a cheat code. Maybe even eyes closed with the ball if you want to do it. Mm-hmm. Did you ever, I asked Chris the same question. Well, Chris did do this, which was super innovative to me. This like blending of performance and skills training. Like Chris would have us do like a skater hop with the ball into a 1 dribble pull-up. So you're like combining the two things. Did you ever do that with your on-the-court training?
I don't think I have. I've done a little bit of it with Chris, actually. That's I've always kind of done it separately. That is something I would, look into though. You see people, you've probably seen the crazy videos of like KD before games,
mm-hmm.
The 360 one-legged spins and doing RDL straight up into a pull-up. There is value in it, it kind of goes back to proprioception. Can you do all that and then still get back to like a solid base? Definitely something that I think would be worth adding in.
For sure. So we talked about the 8 or 9-year-olds. Now as we're moving up the timeline, I guess, when you're training guys that are your age, what's your approach? For me, for skills training, the younger you are, the more kind of what you touched on, the more general you can be, because you don't know what a 6th grader is going to grow into, going to be. Whereas a 15-year pro, you know where they're getting their shots, you know what their role is, so you can be a little more specific. Is there an equivalent of that for you with performance training, or just overall what's your approach with the older people?
There is. The older you get, the more specific we're going to get. Even through high school, most of the athletes that come in have it narrowed down. They play 1, 2, maximum maybe 3 sports. So we're doing stuff that is I'm not a huge fan of the word sports specific. In the day, I think athletes need to train like athletes. But there is some things that need to be done for each sport. So we get more specific in that way, and then it gets even more individualized, to the athlete. Are they, what are their knees like? Like what problems do they have going on? Do they have back issues? Are their feet strong enough? Older we get, the more specific we're going to get to sport and the athlete's individual body.
Not a fan of the term sport specific. Talk about that. What do you mean?
Obviously, there's always things like basketball players need to do certain things, football players need to do certain things. But I don't think that means the things that aren't necessarily in your sport need to be neglected. Like in basketball, we're never going to hit top end sprinting speed. Still think we need to do top end sprints because that's how we're going to, that's one of the best ways to drive power and increase the power. So things of, not saying sport specific is, a bad thing. I just think it's a bad thing if we neglect everything that is not involved in the sport. Because at the end of the day, we're training to be a better athlete when we're in the gym performance training. So I think doing that as a whole is the best way to approach it.
I love that. Sprints are a major key for sure. Because like you said, it's about more so developing them as athletes instead of a basketball player. Maybe even as humans more so than a basketball player. Like, because the reasoning I've heard, or like argument, I guess, is like humans are meant to sprint. Our ancestors were running from tigers or whatever. So like it's in our DNA to sprint. The dimensions of a basketball court, 94 feet, is not enough room to get max effort. So like exposing your body to the ankle stiffness to pop on and off the ground when you're sprinting, that amount of force in that short amount of time translates directly to jumping, to changing direction. Like, so a ton of different qualities. What other exercises, lifts, whatever, have you done that for basketball players that aren't sport specific, but you still love?
I think this goes back to it's going to be specific on the person. I think, sprinting is a big one. And then I still think a lot of people don't like training like max strength for basketball players. I'm a big fan of let's get as strong as you can first, then move into more complex, individualized, like muscly individualized exercises. So like I'm a fan of a basketball player, going really heavy back squats for, 3 to 4 reps. I think a lot of kids, we see the things on Instagram, we see the things on TikTok that like NBA basketball players are doing, and they want to go try it. But at the end of the day, like they need to, like their biggest thing is they need to get stronger first. So I think, true power, like max strength and power, is a very underrated thing in basketball. I think that's a thing that needs to be developed before we do anything else.
Especially at the high school level. Well, it just depends what your training age is.
Yeah.
But like there's a certain level of general strength that I think is important to tap into. You use the term muscle something independent.
Just muscly, like specific, hitting, specific muscles in a way, like smaller muscles. Like I think we need to go broad first, overall strength of an athlete, then narrow it down, into the smaller muscle groups. Okay.
What, like smaller muscle groups, tibialis, something like that? Okay. As opposed to like a compound lift hitting multiple things at once. Okay. PJF has talked about the different types of basketball strength. There's like human to human strength. If you had an older brother growing up and wrestled with them, you're really good at like physicality, moving bodies. Then there's weight room strength. And then one of them was farmer strength. I forget the details of that. And then there were 2 more. I wish I could remember the other ones. But I'm mainly curious about the human to human strength. Like, cause you look at someone like Kyrie, who's not like jacked.
Strong dude though.
He's strong as hell. He'll drive, bump a 7-footer cause he understands like leverage and timing and stuff like that. Are there any ways you implement that stuff? Human to human strength? I don't know if you'd be able to like have them wrestle.
End of the day, like the goal is to get the weight room strength to convert to human strength on the court. Like that's the end goal. So, one of the ways you can get stronger in human to human is playing against stronger humans. I think that's probably the best way to do it. Like I said, when I did the internship and I was helping out down in Houston, I got really strong that year. I wasn't lifting like super heavy. I was guarding, Jay Sean Tate and Sion James, like freaks of nature who were like, I did not compare to at all when it came to strength. But, taking those bumps every day, and those, the strength there is like, it's not predictable. It's not like, okay, like I need to move this to here. Like you have a bump, like you have to brace quick. Like, so I think playing against stronger people is the best way for you to get stronger in the human to human aspect.
So you mentioned bracing kind of at unpredictable times. That reminds me of the importance of your core. Mm-hmm. A big part of like defense, especially, is being able to unpredictably brace your core to absorb contact or even change direction. What type of core? I don't know if you could call it a hot topic, but it's like people say like sit-ups for basketball players isn't the most efficient thing to do. Different schools of thought. Do you train core? What are your bread and butter exercises?
Core is very important. I think it goes back to kind of, our sit-ups, basketball specific. No, like we still need to develop the muscles here. Yes. So we train core, all throughout. A lot of anti-rotation stuff. That's going to translate to the bumps. Being able to keep your frame, balance is core work. Like being able to stabilize your core when you're not on a firm surface. That's going to translate to not being bumped and being able to produce more force in the bumps. And then rotational core. So doing, med ball throws, band chops, things where we're, not just stabilizing the core, but learning how to produce force through the core as well.
Let's say you have an athlete that says, Brev, I'm trying to get the most physically dominant I could possibly be. Faster than everyone, stronger than everyone, more athletic, more agile. But I only want to do 5 things. These 5 could be lifts, they could be plyos, they could be stretching, mobility stuff. If you had to pick 5 methods, 5 exercises to get the most physically dominant athlete, what would they be?
Oh, that's a great question. 5 individual exercises?
As opposed to what?
Oh, so you're asking like 5 individual exercises.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to go, this is in no particular order.
For sure.
Sprints, I'm going to go sprints, and then I'm going to go a max jump. The max jump could be very broad. That could be jumping on a really high box. That could be jumping over something tall. Some sort of max jump is in there.
Okay.
So sprints, max jumps.
Let's pick one type of max jump.
Oh, you're really making me narrow it down here.
Yeah. Because box jump, you got the knee flexion. Broad jump, working more like horizontal stuff.
I'm gonna go max death drop jumps.
Ooh, fire!
Absorbing the force and then springing back up. I'll go that.
Okay.
I'm gonna go some type of overhead pressing for upper body. Probably single arm dumbbell, so we get some core stability as well.
Okay.
Overhead press.
Standing up, pressing.
Yeah, I like standing. I like kneeling. Kneeling is a little easier to keep the shoulders from sliding back and forth. Sprints, jumps, and overhead press. Gotta go. I'll probably go trap bar, deadlift.
Okay.
That leaves me one more. I'm gonna go some kind of rotational. Probably rotational med ball throws.
Like that.
So we got a lower body, upper body, a rotational exercise, and then sprints and jumps.
Yeah. Strength, speed, coordination, got to catch the med ball. Mm-hmm. Is there a reason for trap bar deadlift instead of barbell?
I I think it's more applicable to most sports, not having to hinge the hips as much. You get a little bit more activity in the glutes, which are basketball players specifically tend to have very underdeveloped glutes. So a lot of basketball players tend to have, lower back pain as well. And then, your frame's underneath you. You're in a position where you're in a lot in a basketball game, whether that be jumping, defense, you're always in a quarter, half squat. So I just think the trap bar is more applicable to most sports in general.
I have heard, I guess it's more so bodybuilders maybe that have talked about the importance of getting a hip hinge. Mm-hmm. You think that's important for basketball players or not as much? Because I like what you're saying about the trap bar. Gets that chest up a little bit, which is a little more specific.
Yeah, I mean, you're still hinging the hips. I think that's, it's very important to incorporate a hip hinging lift. There's also less of a learning curve with the trap bar as well. That's another way. That's another reason I like it. But yeah, it is important to have a hip hinge, whether that be an RDL, whether that be a trap bar. I'll always go with the trap bar. I don't think I've ever had any of my athletes do a straight bar or a deadlift.
Nice. And then overhead press, what's the importance of that for basketball players?
Shoulders, what we take our bumps with. I think it's very important to build a wider frame. You take bumps to the shoulder over and over and over, and we don't have that built up, that's going to lead to problems. So upper body, the wider the frame we can get is better.
All right, bet. What is one thing in the world of performance training that you feel like is overrated? So again, that could be an exercise, a plyo, a stretch mobility thing, what's the word for it? Like the tools or accessories or something, like the parachute, footwork ladder type stuff. Anything like that you feel like is overrated?
I'm not a huge fan of ladders. I do think they're overrated unless we're really young kids. Young kids, I think that's a great way for them to have the muscle to mind connection of where to put their feet and being able to get their feet where they want them. Because if a kid can't put their feet, in the right places, nothing else matters. So for ladders, that's fine. I don't think there's a way to generate max power and force with a ladder for older athletes. I don't use the ladder a whole lot unless it's for younger kids. Not a big fan of the unstable surfaces like the Bosu balls and the, doing squats on a Bosu ball, stuff like that. Not a huge fan of that either. We play on the ground. Not to say there isn't a time to work on balance with the Bosu balls and stuff like that. But then again, there's not an opportunity to produce like max force and power on a Bosu ball. If you want to get more forceful, move something as forceful as you can. If you want to get faster, move as fast as you can. Same thing, basketball. If you want to get better at shooting, shoot as much as you can. Like everything, I think if you want to get more forceful, you have to be able to put max force into something. And I don't think there's a way to do that on either of those two modalities.
That is PJF's reasoning for liking the Smith machine. Mm-hmm. Is like a lot of people say, oh, well, like you're not getting the balance benefits of it. But his thing is like, okay, well, I could load 5 plates on each side of the Smith machine and we can just do pure like force output, It's not really the time that we want to be working on balance, with 5 plates on each side. What is one thing? Oh, the footwork ladder, another PJF thing. He said that it can be good for, I think he was saying the quick ground contacts.
Yeah.
It's popping on and off.
And there's a time and place for everything. There's nothing out there that is like I don't think like this is complete garbage. You can never
Yeah.
use it. There's nothing out there like that, you know. If something was made for the most part and it's generally used, there's some form that it can be applicable to help you. You know, I'm not saying the ladder is never, like I said, you know, for foot placement, quick ground contact, for younger kids especially, I actually really do like the ladder.
Yeah. Time and place.
Yeah.
Depends on who's in front of you. What is one thing that you feel like is underrated?
Underrated. In basketball players specifically?
Yeah. Let's go. Let's keep it hoops.
I think max sprints, like I said earlier, are underrated. Generating power through the ankle. I think foot strength is very, very underrated. You know, for the last 5-6 years, I've trained every lower body when I can, barefoot.
Nice.
I had one ankle sprain in college. I don't think I had any in high school. So super fortunate. I don't think that's a coincidence either. So working on your feet, working on ankle stiffness. You know, you can't take wheels off a bicycle and put them on a Ferrari and expect it to work.
That's a bar.
Doesn't matter how much force we have in anywhere in the body. If we don't have anything to put it in the ground, then it doesn't matter. So I think the feet are probably the most underrated.
I've heard someone say that the feet are, this isn't like a hot take, it's just a fact. Like the feet are the only part of your body that's in contact with the court when you're playing, which sounds super simple, but when you think about it, it's like, oh yeah, like that's a main component of how we interact with our environment. How do you go about training the foot? You mentioned doing lifts barefoot is a great way to do it. Are there any other, you talked about the like specific muscles. Mm-hmm. Are there any things to target, like specific parts of the foot that you like?
Most important part of the foot is the big toe. And I learned this when I said Mike G at GBG Hoops was a big influence for me. Going through his stuff, he would have you do a lot of exercises and like put a kettlebell down and then stretch a band out, and you had to push the band down with your big toe. So strengthening your big toe, I always knew it was important. When I linked up with Leon, he actually showed me research. They say 85% of force production in sports comes through your big toe. So finding ways to strengthen that, whether that be, you know, toe walks, walking on your toes, you know, toe lifts, doing lifts to make sure, like putting the band down, pushing through your big toe when you jump. Endless ways you can work on your feet and big toe, and specifically.
You said GBG put you on to a kettlebell, and then you're tying a band around the kettlebell?
Just take the band here and then set the kettlebell on top of it.
Okay.
And then pull the band out and then smash the band with your big toe. That way, if your big toe lifts up, band's going to snap back. So it's, if you've never, because a lot of people, you say, hey, push through your big toe. No, most people who have never done that before aren't going to have the skills to actually press through their big toe. So it's just a way of having them hold the band down. That way, if they do let it up, the band's going to snap back.
So the band regularly is a circle, but you're like smushing it flat,
Yep.
Bang, kettlebell, and then are you standing up while you're doing it?
You can do a bunch of different exercises, RDLs on it. You can do lunges on it, just making sure, it's just a way to make sure you're just pushing through the big toe while you're doing whatever exercise you're doing.
I like that.
Especially for people, you know, younger kids, and specifically, again, like if you tell them, hey, push through your big toe, they're not going to have any idea how to do that, what that feels like. So that's a way of reinforcing it. Like, this is what it feels like.
Yeah. I love that. So I'm going to have to try that.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about nutrition now. So you're in the process of getting what?
My sports nutrition certification through NASM.
Nice. So then that will allow you to like write programs for people?
Yep. That basically gives you the legally wise. There's a bunch of there's a difference in the dietitian and nutrition pretty much. Dietitian, they can literally like give you food and say eat this. You know, that requires, you know, college degree, things like that. I don't have the capability to literally like give you the food and say, here, eat this. But we can, look at your macros, look at the timing of what you're eating, write you out meal plans based off what you need, what you like, what you don't like, things like that.
So earlier you mentioned there's a difference between eating for performance and health. Talk about that more.
The biggest collegiate athletes specifically, especially at the lower level colleges, I think the biggest mistake that most basketball players specifically make is just not eating enough, under eating. And it's hard when you're in college, especially at the lower level colleges, your resources are lower. So just getting enough fuel is the biggest thing. So something is always better than nothing. We can get away with a little more athletes because we do so much every day. So we don't always have to eat, the cleanest food day in and day out. We can get away with a little more than, general population can.
So that would be McDonald's is better than nothing. Yeah.
Yeah. Ideally, we don't want you to eat McDonald's, but if it's McDonald's or nothing, you're always going to go with something. End of the day, we have to have fuel, in the car to run the car.
Yeah. Okay. So that was my question, because the idea is you need calories to produce energy and that type of stuff. What would you say is like, so you said that in Houston, that was like the best you ever ate. Why do you say that? What were you eating on a daily basis?
So in Houston, we pretty much did a whole food diet. So if it wasn't, from the ground, from a plant, or it had a mom and dad, didn't really eat it. We weren't super strict with it. Every once in a while I'd branch off and have some pizza or, something like that. I'm a big believer in the 80-20 rule, especially in athletes. If 80% of the time you're eating what you're supposed to eat, you're doing really good, you're on top of it. 20% of the time, especially if you're 18, 19, 20, your body's never going to be able to take food like it can now, especially when you're done playing. So enjoy your life. Don't make it miserable. Big believer in the 80-20 rule. But yeah, Houston, when I was in the best shape, it was just all whole foods.
Yeah. I'm big on the whole foods, the simplicity of it. Right now, what I'm big on is like, because I was tapped into the like track and macros stuff pretty early. So I was doing that for a while. Then what I started recently doing is looking at the ingredients. Like, what's a good example? I don't know. Just something you think is healthy, but then you look at the ingredients and it's just 20 different
things that we have no idea what they are.
Can't even pronounce them.
Yeah.
It goes back to what you were saying, performance versus health. Like, main goal for hoopers is probably going to be getting those calories. If you had to give like the ideal way of eating it, but even that just depends, I guess, right?
Yeah, depends on the athlete, what their body type is, what the demands of their sport. Basketball, obviously we're going to need a higher carb diet, especially during season, just because we burn so much during games, practices, compared to someone who, is like a burst sport like track, when you run sprints. You run a sprint and you're done. Those type of guys will be different than basketball players.
That's that like anaerobic versus aerobic. And then basketball is kind of in between, kind of, because like sprints or football, short burst, stop, reset, bang. And then, I don't know. I guess basketball might be on the other end of the spectrum.
Yeah. I mean, basketball is just, super high endurance. Like, you're burning a ton of calories every day. Biggest thing is just making sure we have something going into workouts, practices, games to burn, making sure we are fueled so we don't hit the dive too early into the game, and then making sure we refuel after. making sure you're hydrated during the game. Probably something other than just water is a big thing as well.
Are you a fan of Gatorade?
Big fan of Gatorade during the game. The sugar in Gatorade during the game, I think, is going to help you. It's going to digest into carbs pretty quickly. I'm not a fan of, sitting up playing the game 2 at night, drinking a Gatorade, then going to sleep. I think, like I said, time and place for everything, just like we were talking with, the training stuff earlier. During competition, yeah, I'm a fan of Gatorade.
Protein, 1 gram per pound of body weight. I've heard 0.7. What do you think?
Yeah, 0.8 to 1.2, depending on what your goals are, as far as your body go. Carbs are going to be quite a bit. Carbs are going to be 2.5 to 3 for basketball players in specifically.
Ideal pregame meal would be heavy carbs.
Around 3 hours before 4, we want heavy carbs, pasta, something along the classic, pasta before the game. A lot of hydration. Like I said, with something other than water, electrolytes. So we want sodium, potassium, magnesium. We want to load those before the game. With water in between as well. Right before the game, we want a simple carb, something that's going to digest. That can be, one of the little bars you get. It can be some fruit, something quick right before the game. And then something at halftime, most of the times.
Halftime.
That can be, like I said, another piece of fruit, another bar at halftime. Help you get you through the second half. And then, fueling within the hour after the game, carbs and protein after. That's what an ideal for me. That's what an ideal game day nutrition would be like.
So were you at halftime eating an apple, doing something?
Yeah, I would have snacks, half a PBJ, something quick carbs is going to get you through the next half.
I haven't heard that. I've never seen anyone do that either. Solid. Post game or post lift, I've heard there's like a window of, I forget what the time is, to like get your protein in. I've also heard it doesn't matter. What do you think?
Some people say 30 minutes. Some people say 20 minutes. Some people say an hour. I think it is a window where your body's going to digest it better. I'd say the sooner you can get it in after the lift, the better. The most important thing is, if your goal is 200 grams of protein at the end of the day, if you get your 200 but you didn't eat it 30 minutes after your lift, it's not the end of the world. Like, you got your 200 grams of protein. I think over the course of the day is a lot more important than the window, but I do think there is some benefits in your body taking it in a little better right after, workout, game, whatever.
Do you remember, this was like 6 to 8 years ago maybe, there was a documentary on Netflix called Game Changers?
I don't think I've seen that.
It was, you could probably find it somewhere, but it was about being vegan, and it talked a lot about athletes, and there was like controversy because some of the studies they cited and whatever. I'm not an expert. But like Kyrie, I believe, is still vegan or was at one point. What do you think about that? Being vegan as a hooper.
End of the day, whatever makes you feel the best is what you should do. I need to pick Leon's brain on this too, because Leon's vegetarian.
Is he?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I grew up vegetarian.
Really?
Yeah.
I know me personally, I would feel very tired, sluggish. I would feel like I don't think I'd have much energy. Whatever makes you feel the best is what you should do. And people they all have their different reasons of why, vegan, vegetarian, eat meat, don't. But whatever makes you feel the best, I feel like that's what you should do.
A reason I've heard for it is it reduces inflammation, which is something you mentioned earlier.
Yep. Red meat usually is an inflammatory. It's also one of the better meats you can get. Caloric wise, there's going to be more calories in the red meat. So for people who struggle to eat enough, red meat's going to be good. But it is an inflammatory. That is the biggest thing I hear as well of why people don't eat the meat. A lot of people eat fish too, but not meat, because fish isn't as it's higher in fat. It's anti-inflammatory. So I know a couple of my friends that are old teammates I've had in the past were vegan, but they would eat fish. That was the only type of meat they would eat.
Okay.
I think there's a name for that. I don't know.
Pescatarian.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I grew up vegetarian, and I guess now, not even like intentionally, it just happens to be I'm not eating meat because it's a little expensive.
Mm-hmm.
But like vegetarian I got enough options. I could do it.
Yeah.
Vegan, I don't know, man.
It's hard.
I don't think I could do it.
It's hard.
Because you can't have eggs.
Nope, no eggs.
No cheese.
No cheese, no dairy. Nothing from an animal.
That's tough, man. Shout out to Carl. He's vegan. He was vegan his last 2 years hooping. And he would bring like a little thing of like beans and rice and hummus and stuff to lunch. I could do it, but just not as like a lifestyle.
Yeah.
Nothing prolonged. So now that you've stopped playing, have you started eating more for health over performance? Or not really? Is it about the same?
For me, I'm kind of having fun with training right now. I've always trained very much for basketball. Now I'm kind of experimenting. I don't really know what I want to do with training myself right now. I've always ran a lot for basketball. I want to put on a little more size myself, so I'm eating more towards that rather than health. But I'm still training more on the athlete side as well. So finding a balance of, yes, I need to eat healthy, but I still want to hit my macros is kind of what I'm doing now.
Okay. You're trying to maintain, bulk up, cut?
Yeah, just trying to bulk. I've never got the chance to just, train just for myself and just how I feel and how I look, because I've always trained for performance. But still trying to find a way to do that and incorporate performance training, because with performance training, like if I can't do the exercise, like I'm not going to expect an athlete to be able to do the exercise, so I want to be able to do it, to perfection. So finding a balance between bulking up, putting on some size, and still training on the performance side. And then, getting my macros for that, but just trying to get them as clean as possible.
Facts. So with Supernatural Performance, training at Elite Sports Academy out in that's the Chesterfield area.
Yeah.
So Leon is out living his best life overseas. So you're running the show. So you're working with all ages.
Mm-hmm.
Are we doing bigger groups, smaller groups, one-on-ones, a combination? What is it?
It's been a big mix. There's anywhere from 5 to 8, 9 sessions a day. And he's kind of given me outlines of what to do with each athlete that comes in. But there's been a group of 7 and 8. There's been individuals. There's been partner workouts. It's been a good mix. And this has been a really good week for me, because I've kind of, he's given me outlines of what to do with kind of each athlete. But this is the first time I've kind of had this big of a workload with training. So it's been a really good week for me too. Just learning wise, kind of figuring things out, learning how to pivot during the workout, things like that.
What's an example of pivoting, or why you would pivot?
Progressions, regressions. The athlete does something. It's too difficult or complex, we can degress. If they do something that's too easy, we can always progress it. Always like to start expectations low. It's easier to progress than it is to degress. So just learning how to make it challenging for the athletes, and learning how to do that, whether it means progression or regression.
That's something I've had to learn, is not being super stuck on this is the outline, this is what we have to do. More so who's in front of you, what are they doing in front of you, and based on that, what direction makes sense.
Yep.
So when you have these groups, you said Leon gives you this outline of each person, what they're needing and stuff. What's the process like of, like, if it's a group of 8 people, 10 people, whatever it is, how do you make sure everyone is getting what they need?
The bigger groups, I think I just did one session this week where it was that big. It was like 7. And we set it up into different stations. They were all hoopers. Nice. Luckily, they're all hoopers, so they could all kind of, work on the same things. But set those up into stations. But there might be 4 people in a session with 3 different workouts going on in the session. So finding a way to put them in positions where you can watch all of them, going on. Obviously, time it up where not everyone's going at the same time. But yeah.
But it's kind of like 3 individual sessions at one time, basically. That's kind of cool.
They might all be, they might be all working on, say, just brought here, like say a lateral quickness movement. But they might be at 3 different levels in terms of their athleticism. So they might be working on the same thing. It just might look different for each of them. It goes back to being able to progress and degress.
Yeah. And then if they're working on the same thing, but let's say it's 2 basketball players and a football guy, are there ways for you to, Leon posted a video of Matt and Rob a couple weeks ago doing a depth drop off a box into handles to make it more like hoop specific. Yeah. Are there ways of doing that for if you have different athletes of different sports in the same group? Yeah. Or just in general, making it more specific?
Like to their sport that they play?
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of the athletes, too, they don't play one individual sport, especially the high school kids. So at that point, you're training them more as a general athlete in their sport. If a kid plays basketball and football and baseball, we just need to develop them as a better athlete. There's not many kids that come in and only play one sport, which I think is a really good thing.
Very good.
I only played basketball growing up. I wish I would have played football, soccer, something else, just to develop, more motor skills and muscles outside of what you use in basketball. I think that goes back to kind of what I said earlier. The most important thing is just developing them as an athlete first, and then getting more specific into their sport. But yeah, there's always ways, more advanced athletes, you can make it more specific to their sport.
For sure. Let's talk books real quick. So 75 Hard, you said you read 2 of them. Was that, I'm done with 75 Hard, so I'm done reading? Or is that like, have you kept on reading past that?
I'm reading right now. Leon just sent me one and I forgot the name of it. I'm going to have to go back and look at that later. I read, what was the last one I read before that? I read Peak. And then I read, really good one was Stillness is the Key. I forgot who wrote that one. Stefan actually recommended that one to me. That's one of my favorite ones I've read. It's just about being basically how we're never really truly like present in what's going on like in front of us. It gives different examples throughout the book, just kind of focus on, it gives the example of like a painter, how a painter is one of the few examples in the world of people who are like completely present in what they're doing. Because if they don't, if they mess up one line, it's over. They're saying we should kind of basically apply that to different other areas in our life. It was a really good book. That's probably one of my favorite ones I've read. It's helped me a lot.
It's funny you bring that up. I've been thinking about that a lot the past handful of days, actually. Because I've been posting a little bit more, so I'm spending a little bit more time on social media or just on my phone in general. And it just scatters my brain, and then that just kind of stays with me throughout the day. So instead of walking, I'm walking, but then my mind is 5 different places. So I'm trying to lock in on that. I read something, I I forget what book that was, but it was saying that monks or just like Buddha people, they'll like be eating and they'll just in their head be reciting eating. Or as they're walking, they'll just recite walking to stay truly present. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I'd ever get to that level. Maybe, who knows? But that idea of just being fully present is fire.
You can never you can never maximize your potential in whatever you're doing if you're not like truly focused on what you're doing. And it's hard. It's hard to stay focused on exactly what you're doing.
That's why I love the word grounded, is because to me that's like grounded in reality, being where your feet are, not like you got these past experiences, not bringing those into the present. You're just fully right where your feet are, fully present. So that's fire. Were you tapped into any of that during your playing career?
I didn't really start reading until probably this past year. I read those two during 75 Hard. I did that. That was a couple years ago. If I could go back, I wish I would have read more when I was still playing. Yeah.
I was the same way. I didn't start reading until I stopped playing also. Leon put me onto one called The Science of Getting Rich. Mm-hmm. Maybe that was the one he was having you read, but maybe not. He's also a big fan of Joe Dispenza.
I think the one he sent me was by him.
Probably. It has supernatural in the title.
That is the one. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So how we normally end this is, anything that you want to speak on, any last message, any words of wisdom, what to be on the lookout for moving forward. Basically, the floor is yours, anything you want to speak on. And then 2, plug away where people can find you, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, anything.
Okay. And biggest thing, you're never going to do everything correctly. It's always how you do things, not what you do things. The cliche, how you do one thing, is how you do everything. Big believer in it. That's what I live by. Whether that means, day-to-day life, how you interact with people, what you do in a basketball workout, you're going to do in a skill workout. Visualize the person you want to be 10 years from now, and act like that person. That's kind of where I'm, how would that person interact with people? What kind of, how would they start their day? What would the routine be like? Details, all throughout the day. Act like the person you want to be in 10 years. And that means act like you're as successful as you want to be in 10 years as well. That's my biggest motto at the moment. Y'all can all find me on Instagram, Breven_McMullen or Brev.training. Or you can just DM us, Leon at Supernatural Performance. There's going to be a couple programs dropping soon. I'm also running virtual training right now. I got a lot of kids, I met a couple kids in Houston. I got a couple kids back home in Park Hills. I wish I could, but I just can't get back to Park Hills, 3 or 4 times a week. So I am offering virtual training right now. That basically includes, me giving personalized programs to your goals, nutrition guidance, stuff like that. You sending back feedback to me that way through video, and then me helping you out that way. So for the kids I can't get back to, or if you're interested in virtual training, just shoot me a DM at Breven_McMullen.
Fire. All of those will be in the description, probably on Instagram too when I post it. Performance training, go get at my guy Brev. Appreciate you taking the time. Appreciate you sliding. Appreciate you being here.
Absolutely, bro. Appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. That is episode number 30 in the books. Peace.